Hi everybody, welcome to Christian Homestead. My name is Jared. We have a new video from my friend Adam Eliyahu Berkowitz on his channel. The name of this video is Red Heifer, Retraction, and Apology. Okay, so I'm interested in this. This is a story that I've been following pretty much ever since I started my channel back in 2021. Okay, so who is Adam? This is my friend with Israel 365 News. I have cited so many of his articles. Pretty early on, it may not have been until 2022, but I did a video where I did like this big timeline of preparations for the third temple. And that video went viral. And then shortly afterwards, Israel 365 contacted me, and I've interviewed a couple of them, including Adam. And Adam, he kind of specializes in these news stories happening in Israel where you'd have what I would call Jewish specific signs of the times, right? They're waiting for Messiah to come, and so many of them feel like it's going to happen soon. In a sense, Adam is kind of like my Jewish counterpart, only he's a he's a professional and I'm not. But we focus on a lot of the same things, and so there's some overlap when it comes to what's happening in the Jewish world. And some of the information of what's going on over there when it comes to signs of the times kind of is only reported by him. And he's been really involved in documenting what's going on with the red heifers. Why do we care about the red heifers as members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints? I'm saying this for the benefit of anybody that's new. Well, I don't know that we do care. I have tried really, really hard to figure out what do we as a church believe when it comes to the temple in Jerusalem. And I have, a couple different points of view between all these quotes that I've collected from prophets and apostles. Some have said that the Jews are going to build the temple, and others have said that we are going to build the temple. And so that's why I entertain the idea of the BYU Jerusalem Center being converted into a temple someday. And the church, of course, would never go against the laws of Israel, and they wouldn't do anything that'd be contentious. And the Lord can do things however he wants, in whatever way he wants. Elder Bruce R. McConkie said that it's going to be members of this church that build the temple. However, we have other statements like from, I think it's John Taylor. Yeah, John Taylor, where he's talking to Baron Rothschild, who's a Jew, and talked about the fact that you will build the temple in Jerusalem. So the reason why I'm interested in the red heifers is because if it's going to be the Jews that build the temple, the way that they want to build the third temple, a necessary piece of that is the red heifers. They could, my understanding is that they could build the temple. They could do some of the rituals in there, but there's many that can't be performed unless you have the ashes of the red heifer, to purify Jews that ascend up to the Temple Mount and do certain things there. It's kind of complicated from what I understand. So that's why I'm interested in this story. Now, he has an interesting update and raises some really interesting questions. And I want to go through that. We're going to go through some of the transcript here. I've highlighted a lot of what he said, and I want to break it down. Before we do that, let's just review really quick what I've been tracking with my spreadsheets. So this is a spreadsheet called Judaism Temple Preparation. And by the way, you can access my spreadsheets anytime. The link is in the description box of each video. I recently created a new column I, so we could easily categorize these events that have to do with the red heifers. So the first one is what's currently on row 33. So the first thing that I'm tracking is announcement of compiling a list of Jewish priests who would be eligible to prepare the red heifer and serve in the temple. The announcement coincides with the weekly Torah reading that describes the preparation of the red heifer. So this is March 28th, 2016. Okay, then we skip forward to September 15th, 2022. Five red heifers arrive in Israel from Texas. And I have some pictures here and like articles to show you. So this is a story that the Jerusalem Post covered, and they're a more mainstream um, news outlet. So they were tracking this, and so were others. But we're going to talk about that in a minute. April 3rd, 2024, young Cohen, or in other words, a Jewish priest, one who is descended from Aaron in the Bible. So, a young priest or Cohen identified who is qualified, ritually pure, to perform the red heifer ceremony. And the Temple Institute posted about this on their social media accounts. And this is him. Now, I think it's him. It's this person here that's referred to later on in this video that we're going to be talking about. I think that this is the young Cohen that did the practice run. And at this point, I guess we don't know if it was a practice run. I'll explain in just a minute, but it may have been him that did it. Okay, so this was last year. Okay, and then August 6, 2024, reenactment of the red heifer ceremony. Reenactment in the sense of this. It was like not with a real heifer. But you have this article. This is Middle East Eye. Israelis practice red heifer ritual in front of Al-Aqsa Mosque. And you have like a cardboard cutout right here. It's not even a heifer, by the way, if you know cows. But anyway, they did this. They're serious about this. They really want to do this and may have done this for all I know. And for all that Adam knows at this point. May 7th, 2025, Rabbi Ariel says it is unclear if any of the red heifers are suitable for the ceremony. Well, I actually have a couple things from him. So we have this on Israel 365 News, an article written by Adam Eliyahu Berkowitz. Rabbi Ariel, at this moment, it is not clear whether we have a red heifer suited for the ceremony. And then Adam points us to this YouTube video. It's in Hebrew, but this is Rabbi Azaria Ariel. He is the head of the research department for the Temple Institute. Here's a picture of him with a magnifying glass with some red heifers. Okay. So back March of this year, he said it was unclear. And then later on, this is August 6th of this year, Temple Institute announces all Texas red heifers disqualified. And then they posted about it right here. We're going to come back to this in a minute. Okay. And then July, which I need to update this. This was July 1st. July 1st of this year. And this is the part that's in question in this video. Disqualified red heifer burned as practice for the actual ceremony. I was shocked, but at the same time not shocked when this news came out. They actually, at the very least, did a practice run. This is 7 Israel National News. There's like a short video clip of it. Biblical red heifer ritual comes to life in rehearsal ceremony. And it talks about the fact that it was disqualified, a disqualified red heifer. Okay, so up until this point, that's what I was tracking. So let's see what Adam has to say. He says, I've been writing for Israel 365 News for 11 years and have written over 5,000 articles. My main focus is to present the prophetic process of redemption taking place in Israel, what Jews call Gula, which, by the way, you could also, like, the equivalent in our theology would be essentially the second coming in the millennium. They refer to it as the Messianic age, but Gula is like when finally, after all these trials and everything that the Jews have had to go through, There's going to be a 1,000-year period of peace. Messiah is going to be here. Okay. Continuing, I frequently write about projects relating to the preparations for the third temple. Now, let me just say, um, for as long as I've known Adam, and after studying his work, which has been quite extensive, like he said, 5,000 articles, he is a very good journalist. He is a man of integrity. He's honest. He's kind. He's humble. I know this just from reading his articles, but as well as having interviewed him, I think 3 or 4 times. I'm not sure, at least 3 times. This is a good man. He is a good man. He is trustworthy, and I feel like he has nothing but the highest standards when it comes excuse me, when it comes to journalism and reporting things accurately. Okay. Whenever, if there's ever a mistake, he will correct it, and he just cares about the truth. And that's what you're supposed to do when you're a journalist. And that's what we should do as human beings. We should care about the truth. So I have a very high opinion of Adam, and a lot of respect for him. Okay, I'm going to skip down. Rabbi Azariah Ariel, a noted Torah scholar, was tasked with heading the project for the red heifers. He says, I want to emphasize that I've always maintained that the Temple Institute is the only and the final authority regarding anything about the temple. Now, this is where, as a member of our church, I have a little bit of a question, and I always have, when it comes to doing anything in the name of Judaism. That is certainly with something as big as the third temple. I've been trying my best to study Judaism, and I feel like I've gotten to know it, but there's obviously still so much more to learn. Even if you were Jewish, you'd still have tons to learn. You can never reach the end as a mortal. But the Jews across the world do not have like a centralized power structure. It's not like a centralized religion like ours, where we have the prophet, and the prophet is within the first presidency. He has his 2 counselors. That's the highest quorum of the church. Underneath that is the 12 apostles, and then after that you have the 70, and so on and so forth. It's centralized, and so there's no question when something happens in the church by what authority it's happening. In Judaism, like from their point of view, there was a time, biblical times, when you had prophets, and you also had kings like Saul and David and Solomon. And so I don't think back then there was really a question from like a Jewish perspective of who had the authority to build Solomon's temple, for example. Nowadays, I don't know. I know that there are like chief rabbis. For example, you have the chief rabbi of Israel. You would think, if anything, the third temple and all the efforts of the Temple Institute would fall under his authority, but that's not the case. It seems like it's mostly just and I'm not trying to diminish their importance, but it feels like they're mostly kind of like an activist organization. And I wonder, if they were successful at doing all these things, would the rest of Judaism accept it as authoritative? And I don't know. Within Judaism, you have different, you wouldn't call them denominations, or at least that's not how the Jews look at it. I was told by Rabbi Gerfine, let's see, for like a couple years, Israel's 365 set me up with Rabbi Gerfine. He lives in Jerusalem, and I was blessed to be able just to pick his brain about everything about Judaism, and I learned so much. And the way that he described it is that in Judaism, it's a tribe. They view it as like a big tribe. They're a people, and within the tribe, you have these different opinions. There's like the joke about, I can't remember how it goes. It's like 2 Jews, 16 opinions or something like that. You have, like, for example, you have big divisions. Like you have the Reform Jews, you have conservative Jews, you have Orthodox, you have ultra Orthodox, and stuff like that. And so that's like a big question that I've had is would it even be viewed as authoritative if the Temple Institute was successful? I don't know. I don't know. Anyway, continuing, he says, I emphasize that all the information I conveyed in my book and articles until July of this year, so before the practice or the non-practice, the real thing, were, to the best of my knowledge, accurate and complete. I was surprised in the first week of July to see an article in Israel National News with a grainy video showing a cow being burned on a pyre of wood, with the story claiming that one of the red heifers had been stored in Shiloh. Okay, that one of the red heifers being stored in Shiloh had been deemed unsuited for the ceremony. It was burned as a dry run, a practice for an eventual red heifer ritual. I contacted the Temple Institute to verify this and was told that they had overseen the burning and requested that it not be photographed or videoed. They had asked that Israel National News remove the article, but the request was denied. I chose to honor their wishes and did not publish an article about the burning. So again, there you go. This is Adam's integrity in his good nature. But 1 week later, the news had spread. Of course, none of the accounts were firsthand or based on Jewish law. They were inaccurate in spreading information. Now, before we continue, I had come across a strange video. This is a podcast called Timcast IRL. The video is Gavin Newsom says he will end Trump presidency, vows to gerrymander California. And later on in this 2-hour long video, they had this guy on. This is Adam King. As you can see, he's Jewish. And he's been involved in some stuff. This video is not really about Adam King, but he made the claim that the practice run was not actually a practice run, that it was the actual thing. And he said that he got some of the ashes. You can see the little baggie right there. He said that these are ashes from the red heifer, which I automatically thought, come on now. They've been trying for so long to get these ashes. I don't think that they would just like give them as like a memento, as a souvenir to somebody, because like they need them to last. Even though the ashes can go like really far and wide and last for a long time, they probably just wouldn't be like, here, keep this for a souvenir. But he said, yeah, it was the real thing. And I knew that couldn't be, or at least I thought I knew, because when you look at the video, you can tell that this is not the Mount of Olives. I've been looking at the Mount of Olives a lot ever since I started my channel. Even before I started my channel, I could have told you that this wasn't the Mount of Olives, because the Mount of Olives is a really important place in our church, and also in Christianity and Judaism. It's a famous place. The Garden of Gethsemane is over there. We know that when Christ comes, he's going to set foot on the Mount of Olives. You have the BYU Jerusalem Center that's on Mount Scopus, which is part of the same ridge as the Mount of Olives. So I've seen the Mount of Olives lots of times. This is not the Mount of Olives. And it turns out that this was near Shiloh. So I was just like, dude, yeah, right. It was not the real thing. It wasn't done in the right place. They wouldn't give you these ashes. And then he said that some of the ashes were being used to heal people. And just like the whole thing just didn't sound right at all. And so I reached out to Adam, and Adam's like, yeah, good job. No, that was not on the Mount of Olives. And there's no way that this was the real thing. Well, let's continue. Okay, so Adam says, I requested again, and I was told precisely what to print. I was given specific details about the practice burning. I was informed by the Temple Institute that, um, sorry, the transcription sometimes is off because it's automated, that the heifer that was used in the practice burning had been deemed unsuited, and the burning did not produce ashes that could be used to purify the Jews. The burning was carried out in Samaria, and to the best of my knowledge, the actual red heifer, in order to be suited to produce ashes that are suited for purifying Jews, has to be burned on the Mount of Olives in a very specific site. And you guys, I should have pulled this up, but the Temple Institute talks about this on their website. They talk about the fact, and I feel like this is well known in Judaism, that it has to take place on the Mount of Olives because it has to be within sight, or like a direct line of sight into the Holy of Holies. Like if you're on the Mount of Olives and you're looking at the temple, if the temple was standing and the gates were open and the doors were open, you can like look from where you're doing the red heifer ceremony directly to the Holy of Holies. So you see? Okay. In the beginning of August, the Temple Institute posted an announcement on their Facebook feed stating that all of the red heifers had been deemed unsuited. All 5 of the remaining 4. I published an article directly quoting and linking their announcement. Yeah. So here's his article that he's talking about. Here's the Facebook post, and I want to read some things from here. August 5th of this year, it says the halachot concerning the eligibility of a potential red heifer are very strict. And unfortunately, all our efforts so far have been frustrated by the appearance of more than one non-red hair on all our potential candidates. And then later on, simply to create a fire. So this is another thing, because it talks about some of the issues that they've been having with carrying out the ceremony, the mitzvah. Simply to create a fire that will burn at a temperature capable of converting the heifer into ashes is a task that has required much research and experimentation. Later on, the actual burning of the heifer must take place. It says must take place on the Mount of Olives. I should put that in red. At a vantage point from which the Kohen performing the ceremony can see into the great entrance of the temple sanctuary, or at least where it stood. So in other words, the temple doesn't have to actually be there. You just have to know where that spot would be. And then they say right here, recently, a groundbreaking test run was taken using a disqualified heifer. So it's so that they say it's not. It wasn't at the right spot. It was a disqualified heifer. It doesn't seem like they even know how to do the fire hot enough to get the ashes, or at least as many ashes as possible, or to do it in an effective way. So, and then they say that basically all the red heifers are disqualified because of having more than one non-red hair. Okay, let's go back to Adam. I published an article directly quoting and linking to their announcement. The Institute contacted me and told me to print a retraction. 3 of the red heifers, they told me, were still potentially kosher for the ceremony. I did so. I printed a retraction even though the Institute's original post is still on their Facebook feed claiming that all of the cows have been disqualified. I was asked by many people to comment on the practice burning. So that would have included me because I sent him an email, even though I wasn't there. And I have gone on record making statements that I now know were inaccurate. Okay. I have gone on record making statements that I now know were inaccurate or unfounded. There were statements in which I was quoting precisely the information that I had gotten directly from the Temple Institute. To be candid, there are many contradictory claims, and I can no longer present myself as an accurate source, even though I will never quote anyone except for the Temple Institute. Even so, I can no longer trust the information given to me by the Temple Institute. Okay, so Adam is frustrated, and rightly so. I do have to wonder. I do have to wonder. So, number one, I don't think that any of this makes Adam a bad journalist. He's this is what you do. You quote people. And if they're lying to you, then that's on them. If they're giving you bad information, that's on them. But like when you quote somebody, you're like, "Hey, the Temple Institute said this. Okay, here's my article. This is what they said." That's what journalism is. As far as the Temple Institute giving out bad information, one thing that I wonder, and this is mostly just speculation, so take it with a grain of salt, but we know that what happened on October 7th of 2023, uh, at least according to Hamas, it was partly brought on by the Red Heifers. At the 100-day mark of the war, their public relations person did like a video and put out this statement, and he brought this up. He brought up the Red Heifers because they know what the Temple Institute has been doing, and they don't want a Jewish temple on the Temple Mount. They want to maintain the status quo. And it's not just Hamas, it was also Hezbollah. I've done a video about this before, and I don't have it pulled up right now, but both Hamas and Hezbollah talked about the Red Heifers. And, it's something that could exacerbate things, cause more contention. It's highly controversial, right? Because of what it represents. It represents, because like, excuse me, in a way, the ashes of the red heifer is kind of like the last step before actually implementing the temple. Like it's like kind of like the last obstacle before there's no more obstacles, with of course the exception of actually building the temple. But so um the Temple Institute, maybe they want to be careful with what they say, or they kind of want to make it, murky, so that, anyone who's watching, we're kind of like in this state of confusion. It's like, what are they doing? Do they have it? Do they not have it? Was it successfully done? They said this, but now they're saying this, but now they're going back to the. So maybe it's intentional. I I don't know. I don't know. Um, okay, but Adam says that he's not going to trust what they say anymore about the red heifer. He continues, I would like to say in my defense that I was given false information. These are some of the points that I discovered were inaccurate. The young Cohen, which again, I don't know if it's this guy right here or not. I'm assuming that it probably is, but who knows? The young Cohen appointed by the Temple Institute, whose identity I still do not know, he was trained to carry out the ritual. He told several people at the event that the red heifer was kosher and that the ritual was not a dry run, but was in fact intended to produce effective and authentic ashes that could be used to purify Jews. And in the end, he verified um, that was what this burning had produced, actual ashes that could be used to purify Jews. I was told that the cow had I was told that the cow I was told by the Temple Institute that the cow had been bitten by a dog, uh, and being bitten by a dog renders it unsuitable. Several sources who were at the burning denied this. I was told that the cow had been slaughtered in one location and burned in another, which would not produce the desired kosher results. Now, that's kind of interesting right there, because we were just talking about the fact that in Judaism you have all sorts of opinions about things. Um, and like I've said many times, in our church, I feel like that's why the living prophet is so important, because it doesn't matter how smart you are, how good you read the scriptures, how scholarly you are. You take any group of people and you separate them and you tell them read this chapter of Isaiah, read this chapter of the book of Revelation, read this chapter of the book of Mormon, and then, explain what it means. And inevitably, you're going to get different answers. It's just going to happen, you guys. And so, in Judaism, I wonder if you had something going on where they're like, well, actually, according to the Talmud, I don't know if it talks about it in the, well, anyway, according to the Talmud, according to whatever, it only needs to be slaughtered on the Mount of Olives, but it can be burned somewhere else. Like maybe they used some kind of logic like that. And, would the rest of Judaism accept that? I don't know. Probably not. There'd probably be people that would disagree with that. So it could be a very complicated situation. Maybe they're thinking about this. Maybe they're just thinking about ways that they could still do this by thinking outside of the box, and thinking about, okay, what do we really, really know? Does it all have to happen on the Mount of Olives, or can just the first part happen on the Mount of Olives? Like there's so many things that could be going on here. Let's see. Several eyewitnesses claimed this was not the case, though I still cannot verify or unverify it. It was clear that the July ritual was not carried out on the Mount of Olives, as is stated in the as it's stated in the Talmud that it must be. So again, the Talmud says that it has to happen there, but is there a question of like how much of it has to happen there? Because if you were to think about this, if you were to have a fire like this, that's a pretty populated area. It's a prominent location. People would see a fire on the Mount of Olives. Look how tall these flames are right here. And then I don't know how much like smoke it produced, but it would probably be pretty visible. I would imagine. So if they just slaughtered it on the Mount of Olives, that could probably go relatively unnoticed. But a fire would probably call a lot of attention. The ritual was carried out in Samaria, but the young Cohen told some witnesses that this was acceptable. Yeah, I mean, if they, interpreted it, the way that I was just talking about, then maybe he would say that. Maybe that's how the Temple Institute views it. Okay, later on, Adam says, this will be my last video on the subject. I cannot rely on the information I am getting. I apologize for misleading people who relied on me, which I guess I can't speak for everybody, but I doubt anybody feels misled by you, Adam, if you're watching this. You're just reporting what's being told to you by the authority that is carrying this out. I want to emphasize that the information I passed on about everything prior to July 11th to July 1st, prior to July 1st was the best of my knowledge, to the best of my knowledge, accurate. Later on, it pains me to say this, but I am deeply disappointed in the Temple Institute. I feel they did not provide accurate information to the public, and they allowed misinformation to proliferate to a degree that damaged the efforts to bring the third temple. And it also damaged their credibility, which will affect their future efforts to bring the third temple. It is my humble opinion that if the Temple Institute is the final authority on the red heifer, there are a few questions they must answer to the public. Okay, and then he asks 6 questions. Okay, number 1, was the event in Samaria on July 1st an actual ceremony that resulted in ashes that can be used to purify Israel? Yeah, so what's the Temple Institute's official stance on that? It would seem, from my point of view, that they are still saying that it was just a practice run, but Adam has heard some other things, so he doesn't know what to believe. Because from who he spoke to, it seems like they're treating it as though it was the real thing. So which one is it? Okay, number 2, are there any suitable or possibly suitable heifers remaining of the 5 that came from Texas? Okay, that's a good question. Number 3, if they are possibly suitable, why has the Temple Institute not yet performed the ceremony? The longer they wait, the greater the chance the cows will become unsuited. They'll grow non-red hairs. If they're not suitable, then why have they not declared them to be so? So yeah, you guys, one of the things that I did a while ago is I had this spreadsheet called Judaism Red Heifers because I was trying to track, how many there were in the first place, because I was hearing a couple different numbers. Um, there was definitely the group of 5. I knew that for sure, but there was another article that seemed to suggest that there was like a separate one, like a 6th one, and then you have a couple others here. So by the way, here's my sources, right? The sources that I used. So I was trying to track these different statements about the red heifers. And so I separated them out. I knew that there were at least 5. And then I took what was said in these different videos and articles and tried to figure out how old are they, because they have to be a certain age before they can be used. And I think, I can't remember because it's been a while since I've thought about this, but I think that they have to be in their 3rd year, meaning that they have to be, I think, 2 years old and a day, because once you hit your 2nd birthday, you've completed 2 years, and now you're in your 3rd year. If I remember right, I think that's the age that they had to be. And so I took down the dates and I was like, okay, well, they are definitely by these green cells that I have here. Oh yeah, 24 months. That's what that is. 24 months. So they are definitely by this point, of the right age. So the last statement that I was tracking, they definitely would have been at least 3 years old or 2 years old by April of 2024. And since that time, I've been wondering, okay, so here you go. Here you go. You have the red heifers. They're good to go. Now we know for sure that all of them are the right age. You would think that they would want to do this as quickly as possible, because it's been such a hassle um, to produce them or to find them. So like you would think you'd want to hurry up. You don't want to wait another 100 years or whatever before you get another shot. Especially since the Temple Institute has done all this stuff to prepare for the 3rd temple. They've recreated all the instruments and vessels and clothing, and they have a plan. You'd think that they'd want to do it as soon as possible. And I think that's what we've been seeing. I think that's what this is about. I think that's what this is about. I think that's what this is about. And so I guess I wouldn't be surprised if in their mind this was the real thing. If they're interpreting the Torah and the Talmud in a certain way, maybe an out of the box way of thinking. I don't know. I'm not Jewish, so I don't know how much of that is allowed. So good question. How long is it going to be? Why are we waiting? Okay, number 4. Oh, and by the way, in addition to that, like I said, I've spoken to Rabbi Gerfine, and he talked about the fact that there's a number of different other issues that they're trying to figure out. We read some of it here in this post, but Adam in this video talks about the fact that this is one of the most confusing and complicated commandments in Judaism, and so there's a lot to think about. It hasn't been done in like 2,000 years, and so there's just a lot of stuff. I'm not going to get into all that, but okay. Number 4, who was in charge of the red heifers and who officiated at the July 1st event? 5, did the Cohen certify the cow and the event? Is his certification valid? Can we have a statement from him directly? Yeah, that would be really good. I hope that happens. I hope that happens. Number 6 is a ceremony that is carried. Okay, is the ceremony that is carried out in Samaria and not, okay, sorry. Number 6, is a ceremony that is carried out in Samaria and not on the Mount of Olives valid? The final question, who owns the cow and who has the authority? Oh, I guess this is actually the 7th question. He had 7 questions. I wonder if he intended for it to be that way. Here you go. 7 questions, Temple Institute. And then he says, so I apologize if I misled anyone. This will be my final video on the subject. Well, Adam, again, if you're watching this, I hope that it's not just, I don't know. I feel like as time goes by, maybe things will become clear what has actually been going on. I understand the temporary frustration, and it's just kind of a heated moment. And, Adam probably feels a little bit betrayed, or just like, what, are you guys even like, that I'm a reporter. I'm sharing this information with, thousands of people. So this looks bad on me if you guys are intentionally giving me bad information, or you're not being careful in what you're telling me. So I understand, but I think that, as we get past this point, things will get better. And I wouldn't be surprised if Adam does, talk about the red heifers again once the air clears. And I hope that's the case, but we'll see. Let me just make sure I'm not missing anything. I think looks like we talked about all this. So it's been such an interesting thing to watch play out. Let's say now we're going into speculation land. Let's say that in a couple months, the Temple Institute said they answer Adam's questions, and they're like, yep, that was actually it. We're good to go now. Well, what happens after that? In Judaism, I think for some, the idea would be, okay, well, now Messiah is going to come, and he's going to direct the building of the temple. Although there are different opinions about how the third temple is going to come about. Rabbi Gervin said that he believes, and I guess there's a school of thought that believes that the temple will actually come out of heaven. It's already constructed, and so it'll just come down. Others, it seems, believes that the Messiah will build it. That's one of his tasks that needs to be performed. But if they announce that, it would probably make really big news. And unfortunately, that news would also reach people like this. Although, their power has been severely diminished since the start of the war. But are there any other parties that would take it to the next level if they found out? Is the Temple Institute maybe their thought is like, okay, well, now we have the ashes, and in our eyes, this was valid, and so now we're just going to keep it under wraps and wait until Messiah appears. Maybe that's what they're doing. Maybe they're like, okay, this is it. We've done this. God has chosen this time. He allowed for us to be able to do this now. And so now we just wait on him, and we wait for Messiah to appear. And so maybe it's just going to be on the down low as they wait for Messiah. Maybe that's what's going on. So, yeah, okay, I think that's all that I have to say. Just very interesting stuff, but I don't think that this is the end of this story. But that's going to be it for this one. I'll talk to you guys later.